Hi there, folks. So back again for another video. In this one, something a little bit different, going back to something that I used to do on the channel way back when. I say way back when, maybe like a year ago or whatever. But that's having a look at some role-playing game stuff. So no miniatures just yet. They'll be back next week, I guess. But anyway, so recently you will have seen that I've been looking at a lot of Vendel Era stuff from Medbury Miniatures, as they've been doing their Kickstarter and stuff, and that reminded me of this amazing role-playing game, or this supplement, I suppose you'd say, for 5th edition D&D from the folks at Handiwork Games. And this is Beowulf Age of Heroes. So Beowulf Age of Heroes is a little bit of a different one from your normal role-playing game, in that it's essentially made as a duet role-playing game, as they say, where you have one person playing as the games master and then the other person plays as the legendary hero based on the epic poem Beowulf. So it uses all of the same basic mechanics as D&D 5th edition that you all know of, but the thing that's very different about this one is that they've put loads of additional mechanics in here for you to basically sit down with a significant other or your friend who is always reliable when it comes to role-playing games, and essentially you'd never have to worry about trying to get 5 or 6 people together to play a game. You could just play it together and have some fun, which I think is pretty cool. So I thought I'd have a little bit of a flick through this and just show you what it's all about, really. So a lot of it's very much broken down into the kind of stuff that you'd normally find inside of a supplement. You get an introduction to the world, you get a sort of breakdown of how to create characters, you build followers, which are an important part of Age of Heroes and the way that it works. There's also a separate sort of section on building your adventure, way to break down treasure and all that kind of stuff. There is a sample adventure that's included in here called The Three Ogre Brothers. But one of the things that's nice about the work that Handiwork has done on this is that they've also created a separate free downloadable adventure that you can just get your hands on, which also comes with kind of free starter rules to get you going. So you get like a selection of pre-made characters and a pre-made adventure and everything like that, alongside maps and everything, in addition to things like virtual tabletop elements as well. So if you want to play it online, it's great for that. And the whole role-playing game is very good for that, I would say, as well. So you can get that and dive in and just have some fun for free to begin with, before thinking that you have to go and buy a big book like I did here. But it wasn't that expensive in the grand scheme of things. We've also got a section on monsters and then a nice little appendix at the back as well. So yeah, we'll just have a quick flick through, really, I suppose. One of the nice things about this is that it's very much drawing on the idea of classic history and the time of Beowulf at that particular moment. So a look at Northern Europe and that kind of mix between the end of the ancient world and the beginning of the medieval period, and sort of sitting into that portion of history that is tied to myths and legends and sagas, and obviously the tale of Beowulf, as you might have guessed. So it's got a really nice mix of both the historical and the fantastical about it, which I think is pretty cool. So if you're someone who really likes history, I think this is something that you could dive into and have some fun with. If you're someone who likes the fantasy side of things and you like the tales of Beowulf, or you've read other Viking-based or Saxon-based sort of fantasy novels, or like looked at classic Arthurian myth and things like that, these would be pretty awesome to dive into and have fun with. Your characters and stuff are an interesting one in many regards, because you go down this route of everybody's essentially human in the game. You don't have anybody whose lineage is elf or dwarf or anything like that. And then what you do from there is you get like a big bumper crop of like stats and extra increases that you wouldn't necessarily get. So you can see some of them there. So your hit points are larger than normal, because obviously you're a mighty hero. And all that kind of good stuff. And then you pick a background that's sort of tied to the kind of character you want to make, which is really nice. And there's a few extra sort of bits and pieces in there to kind of really build on the idea that you are the Beowulf of your own adventure. So they've done a really nice thing here. Here we go. So this is the heroic tale. So this is the kind of way that you can build your character up to be essentially a class in many ways. Although the class that you play is hero, this kind of just builds on top of that. It's a really nice implementation of the 5th edition mechanics, I think, to kind of give you more to play around with, whilst also being very familiar to people that have played D&D before. So a lot of this stuff is tied to your level progression, a little bit like a class that you'd have in D&D and stuff, which is quite nice. There's also one of the other things that I really like about this is the follower mechanics, which we'll get to in a second as well. And there's a few sort of like nice little additions here and there that kind of change things up to make it feel more unique as a game. Can't necessarily be more unique, but this game manages to do it. You get your own ship and everything here, as you can see. There's a really fun rule that's tied into the game where you always have a spear nearby. So you know how in movies or TV shows, when someone's around, they say spear, and then someone throws them a spear. That is built into the mechanics of the game, which I think is really, really fun. There's also like a really nice way of playing around with inspiration in the game. We'll get to that a little bit more when we dive into the way that you create adventures and things like that. So here we've got the stuff to do with followers, and they're like, obviously I'm not going to show you every single page in detail, because then you just look at the video, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't buy the book. But essentially your followers are a group tied to your stats. So more often than not, you're probably going to have maybe between like 5 and 6, maybe 7 followers, and they act as bit characters, sort of side characters in your story. You are the main focus of everything. You never have to role play them. They are essentially a sort of like a tool, a weapon in your arsenal. Obviously, as things go through, the GM, the storyteller, will start to create stories around your followers, and there are really nice ways to tell their stories. But the main focus of them is to be there to support you and what you're doing. And obviously, they then take the role of other party members that you wouldn't necessarily have in a standard adventure where maybe you had 3 or 4 people sitting around a table, and will help you in things. So you can spend followers, for example, in order to help you with an attack on a creature. You could use them for scouting or jobs that you're not meant to be doing as the hero of the adventure. So, for example, when you're sailing, maybe you have one of them who's very good on the oars, or a good sort of oarsman or something at the back that's kind of like get you through the storms and everything like that as well. And you create a selection of these, and you choose their special abilities and what they're good at, and they'll all have separate powers that you can see attached to them. So, for example, there you go. This follower can serve as a crew member. Seer. Activate this follower to roll a d20. Spend this follower to substitute that roll for any d20 made by the player. So loads of things that are there to kind of help build your character up as this mighty warrior. And it kind of ties a little bit into the Beowulf legend, obviously. And sort of the way that Wiglaf and the rest of Beowulf's men help him with his adventures. So here's where so when you come to building up an adventure, one of the things that's really awesome about the beginning of Beowulf is there's these kind of like portents and things that are sort of spoke about at the start of the poem, and that plays very much into the way that you build up your adventure. So what you'll do is you'll roll on these tables, and you'll see that there are different coloured sections here. So you'll roll on the adjectives, and then you'll roll on the nouns, and you'll create a portent. And depending on the portent that you rolled, tokens, inspiration tokens, so these ones that you see here, I'll talk about these a little bit more in a little bit, will go onto a mat, or you could just have them marked down on a character sheet. And that inspiration can be used throughout your story, your saga, to either benefit the creature, so as you can see here, the monster, or blue, the followers, or green, the player pool. There are obviously other ways that you could get sort of advantage and that kind of thing in your games and inspiration, but the main thrust of this is that this almost acts like a resource that you have to play around with during your games. So you're not just spending it willy-nilly. This is going to have to last you from the start of your adventure when you get on the boat all the way to the very end when you fight against the mighty monster at the end of your adventure. And so you have to spend them wisely. And I really like that it's this kind of global resource that's known to both you and the other player, or multiple players if you're playing with additional people. You can obviously play this with a standard group, by the way, if you want to, but I think the whole idea of it being a duet roleplay is the way to go. So you have this select set of resources, and you just have to work out the best way to use them. The other thing is that this then allows the GM, the storyteller, to tie in interesting emotive moments and unique elements to the story. So say you rolled up a particular thing, so let's have a look, what should we say, forgotten Twilight Eagle or something. Maybe that would tie into something that you heard in the stories later on and was given to you by an NPC or something like that. You'll have a sort of journey that you have to undertake, and there'll be risks as you go aboard your ship and all that kind of thing. There's an entire section on looking after, meeting the people that you find in these new locations as you go traveling for adventure, like Hrothgar in Herut, when Beowulf meets him. And then there's this sort of investigative adventure where you start to learn more about the monster and seeing where things go. So there's a really interesting thing in this about the way that monsters are dealt with. So there are monstrous creatures everywhere in the world. So you might run into all sorts of different things as you go through. But there'll only ever be one, say for example this chap, who is considered the monster with a capital M. This is the Grendel, or the Grendel's mother of your adventures, or the dragon if you were looking towards the latter stages of Beowulf's life. And this creature is the thing that you must defeat. And until you've managed to work out the best way to take that monster down, it will have a kind of undefeatable condition to it. So in the case of Grendel's mother in the poem, she couldn't be harmed by the sword that Beowulf was given. So he found one within her lair, and that one in her lair was able to kill her. The same with the dragon at the end of the story. Wasn't able to be defeated by Beowulf's weapons, but a well-placed attack from Wiglaf's dagger and all that kind of thing was the best way to take it down. And so you've got this really interesting kind of way that the story plays out, where you have this intriguing mystery to begin with. You go off on an adventure on the seas and you face all sorts of risks, and you have to sort of measure the way that you're going to approach that. Then you arrive and you have a really nice role-playing moment where you start to talk with the NPCs in the story that the GM has come up with, and then you have to uncover the mystery of how it all works and what you need to do to defeat the monster. And if you're playing a standard Beowulf style character, then that might be that you have to fight the troll or the giant, and you have to take it out with feats of strength. If you're more of a bookish character, as like a scholar or something, or like a skald, like a bard, then you may find, or a scop, I think as they call them in this period, then you'd end up maybe having to best it in a riddle contest, or you'd use your followers to defeat it by laying fiendish traps and all that kind of thing. So there's a really nice sort of additional layer of investigation, there you go, and adventure built into this, which I think is really nice. You of course get all sorts of magical weapons and treasures. Here's the sample adventure, the Three Ogre Brothers. I will not spend too much time dwelling on this because it will spoil things, but it does everything that you need it to be an introductory adventure. There are lots of stuff in here about exactly how to play it out, and it follows all of the same structures as what you saw throughout the book there. You also get some sample followers and things there, which is good, so you can use those. There's a breakdown of all the different monsters. So these are built as monsters with a small m, essentially, but they have also been built so that you can turn them into capital M monsters, so as you can see there. So turning it from a regular creature into a bigger one. And it also comes with all sorts of different things, like how to remove the undefeatable feature on a Fury Witch and all that kind of thing. So they've built in lots of stuff here to help storytellers, which I think is very, very important. Especially if you're going to be doing this as a duet thing, where a lot of the onus is going to land on you to tell these stories. Having all this helpful stuff in here is very cool. And also the artwork is gorgeous, and there's some really fascinating and interesting characters and creatures in here that will make you want to delve deeper into this period and learn more about it, I mean, just look at the artwork on these just regular raiders and things like that. They're so good. So nice. But yeah, so there's a huge section on monsters, and then I believe we just have the appendix at the back. So there's dragons and things. There you go. So the appendix at the back, a name generator, just in case you were wondering, a way to keep the game flowing, a way to describe the hall that you're going to go into potentially later on in your adventures, a breakdown of how to build the origins and the goals of a monster, which is very cool and very important, and the ways to describe the lair and all that kind of thing, which is just great. And if you're ever stuck for how to describe somebody, just use this table. I need to put some little bookmarks in this so I can remember it all. And then there's just a breakdown of everything else that you've seen earlier in the book to make it easy to reference. And then you've got some sheets at the back that you can sort of attend to. There's also a really nice big index in there as well, so you're about to find everything. Always love a good index. Very, very helpful. So that is Beowulf Age of Heroes. Definitely worth going to have a look at, especially if you want to do something a bit epic with one other player, or if you want to try and do it with a group, you can do as well. It doesn't necessarily change things too much. You just obviously have less followers, or no followers in the case of a larger group, and you just follow it through from there. But yeah, so that's the main book. I just wanted to talk about some of the accessories and things. So I was wondering about the best place to kind of start with this game, because I wanted to get a handle on some of the accessories they do, and also help out Handiwork a little bit with a little bit of extra support as well, because they do amazing stuff, and it would be a shame not to send some extra moolah their way. So I got some of their accessories that were recommended actually by John Hodgson. So this is the little tiny mat that you can get, and this kind of applies to the inspiration that we were talking about earlier. So for the different characters and the monsters and the followers and things. So that's a nice thing to just have, and it's really nice. Very well printed and everything as well. Lovely accessories. And then, because of course I wanted some bling, I was looking at the metal coins, but they were a little expensive. But you can get these lovely inspiration tokens, and these just sit on the board, and they look in world, which is really nice. And you just pop them down depending on who's got what throughout the game. And you can also use these as markers and reminders for the player, just so you can tell them what's going on at each given moment, which I think is quite nice. So there's another thing that they recommended. And then the last thing as well was this. So it comes in a lovely little sack, which I think is great. I do appreciate a little tiny sack or something to hold your dice and things in. But these are story cards. So there's a little thing there for how to use story cards. But this basically is a huge deck of adventures. So you could sit there and be like, what am I going to do? I want to play a reasonably short adventure or something that's not particularly detailed. So let's look at this one. So there we go. A task to be completed by a weaver in a forest with a sword. Let's have a look at this one a little bit more. So flip that over. Oh. So this one says, there you go. A foundling has been revealed. There's a father, a standing stone, and a boar. And you sort of follow through that adventure and see where it goes. And then just tie in everything to that as you're going through the adventure. So this is a very good way for you to quickly and easily build up an adventure without having to worry too much about going through the book. And you can do things on the fly, which I think is a really nice way of sort of approaching this game. You could set up something very, very quickly overnight just by using these, which I think is really good. But yeah, it's well worth having a look at that if you're interested in exactly how to properly use these. I'm going to go and have a read of that later, I think, just to get my head around it a bit more. But just a nice little set of stuff. They also have loads of other accessories for the game. There's also quite a few expansions for Age of Heroes. There's the Seven Seas, I think it's called. I'll have a link down for it below so you can have a look at it. But it basically sort of expands on what's available in terms of pre-written adventures and that kind of thing. There's a King Beowulf book, which is all about how you establish your own kingdom. So maybe if you've been playing this for a while, you want to turn your hero into somebody who has to manage a kingdom. They've got an entire book on how to do that, which is really nice. But yeah, Beowulf Age of Heroes. Great little role-playing game. Definitely worth going to pick up. Even if you don't end up playing it, it is a amazing tome that will come with lots of resources for people who want to try and create alternative adventures to role-play in other systems. It's got loads of tables and stuff to roll in. But then look at that lovely cover as well. Just looks lovely, amazing. Everything's available in PDF form as well, so if you don't want to buy the physical products, you can just buy PDFs, especially if you're playing online. That could be a great help. But yeah, I would heartily recommend this. Looks really cool, and from first impressions, I think it's going to be absolutely amazing to play. I can't wait to dive in and have some fun. But yeah, I'm going to move on and get straight into another video. I've got some terrain to finish. Oh lordy. But yes, I'll be doing that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff down in the comments. I love hearing what you guys are up to. If you have played Age of Heroes, I would love to hear how your campaigns have gone and what kind of monsters you've slain and that kind of thing. It's always nice to hear what you folks have to say. And don't forget that we are nearing so close to that competition prize. Once we get to 2,000 subscribers, and I leave it a little bit longer to make sure we definitely go over the top of it, there's a community post where you can comment down below, and as long as you tell me who your favourite Lord of the Rings character is, I will pick somebody from that. You have to be subscribed. I'll pick someone from that, and they will win a lovely classic metal Tom Bombadil to take home with them and paint up. So I will ship that out to you wherever you are. So yeah, make sure to check that out, and maybe we'll get to 2K very, very soon. Thanks very much to everybody who subscribed and kept the channel going and stuff. It's been really great, and I'll be back soon with another video. Right, time to go and plan some adventures. Bye.